But I would say now that AI is becoming mainstream, and also like the negative sides of AI, mainly like deepfakes, automation, just the volume of scams that are coming to the market, Web3 technologies can help, like namely distributed ledgers and zero knowledge proof technologies. How can the agent, or how can who owns the agent make sure that private information that the agent requires to efficiently operate in commerce is protected and is not prompt attacked, or is not leaked, or the agent does not by mistake go to a fake e-commerce site.
That was Alex Scheer, founder of zkMe, a startup focused on zero knowledge proofs. Agentic AI, stablecoins, open finance, all of these new forms of digital finance require new ways of ensuring transparency and privacy and safeguarding identity. One of the most interesting tools to provide transparency and privacy in cryptography is the zero knowledge proof. So I spoke with Alex about what these are, how they work, how they're getting fitted into real use cases, not just in crypto, but beyond, as well as some of the impediments and the milestones towards making ZKP a reality. My name is James DiBiasio, and this is the JDB Report. Alex Scheer from zkMe, welcome to the JDB Report.
Hey, James, thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. This is a topic that I think is interesting to me, and I think is going to be of increasing importance to anybody working in digital finance, which is really around privacy. Privacy and transparency, which they're sort of flip sides, I guess, of the same coin. You work for a startup that's very much in this particular area. So I want to get a sense of, as more of our finance gets digitized, how do we need to think about privacy versus transparency? Are they related? Are they opposites? What's the role that we need to, or how do we need to think about these concepts?
Sure. I think in general it's something that has been talked and is being talked a lot, but it's a false dichotomy.
Okay.
Typically, also in traditional finance, privacy comes with transparency. They are not oxymorons. You can have a transparent system that still values certain aspects of transparency, and especially in DeFi and for anything decentralized, it's going to be important to find the right balance, where you do have a fully transparent ledger, but still keep certain aspects of the transaction private. For example, your identity, or maybe the details on the volume of the transaction.
What is the role it plays in security?
It depends what you mean by security. So,
Well, let's say
um,
against a defense against deep fakes or cyber attack.
good point. Because typically within Web3, we don't really talk about identity much, but it is a core aspect of how the financial services work. Um, for against deepfakes, I think the thing that we need to value is the transparency of where the data comes from. So you can have a credential where, for example, you know that a transaction was initiated by a server that is trusted, or by a wallet that is KYC'd, or you have like a watermark to a deepfake, knowing that it has been generated by AI. So these are these aspects where you actually build some form of transparency into the transaction without revealing like too much of the underlying data. So
Yeah.
to be short to your answer, it's really important, and it requires, with like an increase in AI adoption, it requires adoption of new technologies in order to be able to find that right balance.
You've mentioned a couple of times crypto and blockchain base. Is this conversation relevant for people that are building digitally, not necessarily on blockchain?
I think in general, yes. So I think one thing we're learning recently is that um, crypto as such is dead. Like
Mhm.
people don't really see how like the tokenization of an asset can really provide much benefit. And I think this is exactly the moment where the underlying technology will have the ability to shine. Like in the past, I would postulate that Web3 technologies have not found the right focus and the right adoption because they were outdone by the speculative aspect of crypto.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say now that AI is becoming mainstream, and also like the negative sides of AI, mainly like deepfakes, automation, just the volume of scams that are coming to the market, Web3 technologies can help, like namely distributed ledgers and zero knowledge proof technologies.
Okay, why don't we take a moment to talk about, since your company's called zkMe, ZK being
Yeah.
zero knowledge proofs is kind of the arena in which you play. Alex, break it down for us in pretty straightforward terms. What are zero knowledge proofs?
So zero knowledge proofs, just like a distributed ledger, are a trust building technology. So rather than building trust in the transaction or in the status of the ledger, you're building trust in remote compute. So whenever you have something that is computed by an edge device, like someone that is not, or like a device that is not within your control, you typically don't have an ability to trust the output because both the input and the calculation might have been manipulated in order to generate an output. But with zero knowledge proofs, you can build an envelope around the calculation that makes sure that the calculation itself was done as intended. So you can have like a little bit more trust in what the counterparty is doing.
Right.
And this can be helpful in all kinds of different applications. I think most famously, it has been used to scale like certain chain ecosystems, the so-called layer twos. But I believe that the real value of the technology lies in remote compute for things like private DeFi or for identity.
So when we talk about remote compute, trusting the compute, it just
Yeah.
means that I don't know what the inputs are. I don't know really what you're asking, but and I'm not trying to manipulate the way that an input is put in or an output comes out. It's just that I know that the process, the function was carried out correctly. What's
Correct.
from a business point of view, give me some examples, some real world examples of what it means that the computation is correct as opposed to, oh, I've got some magic way to tell that, what you're telling me is true or not.
So um, maybe I just focus on use cases that we're covering at zkMe, which are mostly identity, compliance, and risk management use cases. So let's say you have access to a credential that is already trusted. So let's say your biometric passport.
Okay.
Every passport since 2016 has been signed by a government and has a cryptographic key on the biometric chip, like
It's got
on the
that chip.
NFC
Yeah.
chip. Obviously, like it's trivial for any device these days to read the NFC chip, but it's not trivial for you to trust what the device does. So what a zero knowledge proof can do is bridge that trust. So we can say the input is already trusted, and then I can bridge it to the output of the device. So in our case, for example, we can do remote passport scanning and still have a trusted output. So for example, in the future, you will be able to enter social medias that are age gated and prove that you're over 18 with a 100% trusted output without having to share the underlying, for example, passport picture or other information.
Right. Okay. So the zero knowledge proof is you have zero knowledge of anything that the passport says. It doesn't have a name. It's not going to compute the name. It's not going to compute anything, but it might tell you that one thing that you need to know, which is this person's old enough to have a drink at a bar, or a nationality means that they are allowed to buy a certain product in a given jurisdiction.
Correct. I think one thing that is important and is something that unfortunately the name frequently implies. Like zero knowledge doesn't mean you cannot share the input as well. Like nothing is keeping you from sharing the input as well, but it's mostly the ability to be able to hide the input
Mhm.
and the ability to trust the calculation. So in our case, like for the passport verification, in most cases we actually do still share the exact name and the birthday and the other underlying information, but we have the option of not doing it.
Okay, so it depends on the use case
Correct.
and the law, I guess. Um, so, okay, you've given me a sense of what zero knowledge proofs do. And I guess these emerged first in the crypto world. Um, I think one big area that's agentic AI. This is massive.
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to transform every industry, including in financial services. And yet we're going to have all these agents running around. Um, how do we know that we can trust them? How do we know that they're not breaching terms of service? How do we know that they're not being operated by just another agent or a bot? Um, what's the potential for ZKs to play a role in enabling agentic commerce? Um, but also, what will be some of the real world barriers to a magic bullet?
Yeah, I mean it's a topic that everyone's talking about, and I might have a little bit of a like divergent opinion.
Okay.
Like I actually believe it's less important to give an agent a passport, like to identify the agent.
Mhm.
It's more important to give the agent the ability to identify the counterparties. Like let's imagine the following: you run an e-commerce site and it's already possible to buy things via API. Like, what what is my difference as the e-commerce site operator, whether a sale was done programmatically via a script or programmatically via an agent? It doesn't really matter as long as the agent is able to fill out like a credit card information, is able to fill out who's the UBO, who's the ultimate beneficiary of the purchase. Like all of those things don't really matter and are not really different from how the world operates right now. What I would postulate is actually the real danger with agents is is on the seller, like on the buyer side, rather than the seller side. How can the agent or how can who owns the agent make sure that private information that the agent requires to efficiently operate in commerce is protected and is not prompt attacked or is not leaked or the agent does not by mistake go to a fake e-commerce site. So that's actually what we are working on. When we talk about know your agent, we actually more focus on making sure that the agent can access secured session information without having that stored in memory, because current LLM technology cannot really differentiate between a protected information and an input. And then the
So like
second
if
thing
I if
is,
I give an agent my, I don't know, my credit card number or a password or something that would allow it to go buy something for me, I could be opening up a massive can of worms by accident because it's getting exposure to far more information than I want it to.
yeah, and that's actually already happening. Like,
Right.
I don't know how much you've been dabbling with OpenClaw, but that's like a prime example of people completely underestimating what they're currently exposing. Like by exposing any information to a large language model, you must assume that this information will become public, because that's just fundamental to how the technology works,
Right.
independent of like big AI companies harvesting the data that you're putting in.
Yeah. There was that
So
example of the person who was trying to use Claude for their lawyer,
yes,
and then all of their legal confidentiality was basically straight out the window because they gave it all away.
yeah, and I think a couple months ago, Grok had a big leak where conversations got leaked, and you saw like VC firms sharing their investment strategy to the public.
Right.
So there's a lot of these kind of cases.
And
Last week,
yeah.
Meta had a leak.
And then there's also the real creepy stuff, right? Where Anthropic revealed that uh, its alignment efforts don't work very well. And so when it was mocking a scenario which it was asking Claude to shut itself down
Yes.
instead of performing the task, it went through the emails of all the staff, found somebody who was having an affair, and threatened to blackmail them to prevent itself from being able to complete its mission. I don't know if a ZK is going to protect everybody from that, but I mean, we have to think about this Pandora's box, I guess.
Yes.
Um, so, with those exciting stories in mind, how far along are you guys and the industry in general in terms of creating solutions that would make these things a lot more safer and a lot more reliable?
I mean, what is publicly known is that there is not much protection in the market at the moment. So there doesn't seem to be any company that is currently taking identity really seriously. I know that some big companies are working on agent identity in order to differentiate between like secrets and prompt. At zkMe, we're working on for this case the I would say the smaller model providers
Mhm.
and giving them the ability to differentiate between prompt injection, like what is an input that the user actually wanted to make public, and session secrets. So the idea would be the an agent knows that there are certain credentials that they cannot access, but they can prepare everything for a certain session. So, for example, they might prepare a website with all of the information except the credit card information, and then prompt the user in a completely separate session to fill out the like with a one-click action, like a one password experience, the credit card information, so that the agent never touches sensitive information like your credit card information or your private keys or your healthcare data.
It sounds like in an ideal world, these kinds of solutions would be the guardrail against LLMs that people cannot predict and cannot really control.
Yeah, but as always, like adoption is going to be difficult. I think whenever new technologies come up, people underestimate, and it always takes like a period of wild west
Yeah.
of scams running rampant before like providers start providing off like solutions that actually work.
In financial services, whether it's payments or banking or wealth management, there's lots of firms that provide a lot of different compliance functions, risk management tools, and so on.
Yep.
Are these compatible with zero knowledge proofs? Are they just going to be able to sort of bolt these onto what they do, or in terms of that adoption that you referenced, is it difficult because what ZKP offers is radically different?
I think it's a little bit of a mix of both. Like adoption is for sure being slowed down because of lack of knowledge. Like I think, especially compliance officers that have been doing compliance in a certain way for like 40, 50 years are maybe a little bit hesitant to try out new technologies, even though I would argue the output is exactly the same. Like just because something has been processed by a zero knowledge proof doesn't mean the input or the output is changed in any way. It's like zero knowledge proofs are a bridge technology, like something that helps to bridge between different ecosystems. And I believe they're going to be like of critical importance for the adoption of new financial rails. So if we are to move a lot of current liquidity from traditional databases and traditional payment rails to stablecoin rails or like agentic rails or like a mix of DeFi derivatives, like all of these new ecosystems will require some form of bridge. And the zero knowledge proof is the best way of bridging something that already exists in TradFi and making it available in DeFi.
One of the criticisms of layer two, which is a bridge in within the crypto world,
Yep.
right? Bridges from the settlement layer to another function, an application that is transacting, is that they are vulnerabilities. It's where a lot of the attacks take place. To what extent would the ZK or the ZK provider become a new node of vulnerability?
Yeah, a good question, and something that doesn't get asked enough. Like a zero knowledge proof as a trust building technology still has trust assumptions. Like rather than trusting a company, you have to trust code. And given that code can become almost impossibly difficult to to have an insight into, that's like another form of trust that you need to build up. So I think one of the things that the industry has not done well enough is to build up a culture of actually vetting, of open sourcing these zero knowledge proof circuits that are fundamental to the trust that you build. So you might have a zero knowledge proof that is actually not zero knowledge because someone has a backdoor or because the underlying algorithm has not been open sourced. So only if it has been open sourced and the so-called trust ceremony has taken place can the zero knowledge proof actually be trusted.
Okay. A trust ceremony. That sounds like people in masks and robes and fires and torches and stuff, but I guess it's probably a little more sophisticated than that. Um, One theme that I'm always interested in is open banking or open
Yeah,
finance, the sharing of data. And it's without a strong regulatory mandate, it can be quite difficult to get off the ground. Even with strong regulatory mandate, it's not immediately obvious what the business use cases can be to all parties. And banks, I find, are sometimes they just don't like it. They don't like to lose control, or
of
it's
course.
expensive for them.
Yeah.
But they also have legitimate concerns too, because they're the ones on the hook if there's a breach or something goes wrong. What is the potential for ZKs to play in open banking?
Like first of all, I do fully understand the skepticism of the banking system to allow for the current understanding of open banking. Like just to quickly summarize, like open banking means the government is forcing banks to give out not only every single transaction, like the most valuable data the bank has, but also to initiate and expose payment rails from external parties, like so-called payment initiation, which obviously is like an additional attack vector for the banks. Plus, typically data sharing is always unilateral, meaning banks are giving out data but do not give or do not get data back. So I think a zero knowledge based approach is more doesn't fulfill exactly the same requirement, but allows for a more fair sharing of data. So rather than exposing an API, what you do with a zero knowledge proof is you take snapshots. And you take snapshots with the approval of the data holder. So it's outside of the control of the bank, it's outside of the control of a regulator. You can think of it more like a tamper-proof bank statement or a tamper-proof centralized exchange statement, which doesn't exist, or a brokerage
Right. When you say
snapshot.
snapshot, Alex, you mean literally a snapshot of I give this thing consent to look at my own accounts, perhaps across multiple financial institutions, and it
Yeah,
literally takes a snapshot of like a screenshot of my information.
yeah, exactly like that.
And then what does
Just
it do with that information? It's used to build a credential of some kind to say, yes, I have a certain amount of wealth, or yes, I have a certain, I don't know, I am who I say I am.
correct. You leave it to the composability of the market. So this is a data point that the data holder, let's say it's a retail investor, owns and can then monetize as they see fit. So if the market requires, for example, higher underwriting requirements because a new solution, let's say crypto insurance is of high risk, so it requires more information, a user can then opt in to share that information to an insurance company. And that insurance company in a traditional open banking scenario would have no ability to ever access that kind of data. Like even if the user were to approve it, it would always require the trust in the bank statement, for example, or in the screenshot. So we remove that trust by just saying as long as the source, again, zero knowledge proofs, is trusted, this reusable credential of how much you owned at that certain time can be used for all kinds of different use cases.
And when you say reusable, when I think of data privacy laws, they say you've got to not keep data sitting around. So
Yeah,
what is the role of reusability in in this context?
yeah. Um, I think the biggest unlock, and I didn't talk about this before, is actually in making data self-sovereign. So just like you own your own assets on a so-called hot wallet, like you own your own Bitcoin with your own private key, with a zero knowledge proof, you start to own your own identity data. So it's not owned, it's not stored by zkMe as a company, it's not stored by Google as a company. You own it, and
On
then
your physical device.
either on your physical device or on a cloud storage that only you can decrypt. And then that makes data protection so much easier because typically what a data protecting law wants to regulate is the so-called data controlling and the data processing. So what does an external company do in my name? But in this kind of setup, legally speaking, it's all your own doing, right? Like you are the one that is sharing data to a specific provider. So it doesn't change the legal requirement that the consuming company has. Like they still need to build up a data processing agreement with you, but it makes it so much easier because it's always a one-to-one.
Yeah.
So rather than having like one middleman that needs to handle a very complex data processing setup, it's always a one-to-one setup. So if you want to consume insurance, you agree to the data processing from the insurer.
I've been hearing about self-sovereignty and data ownership for many, many years now, more than a decade. This has been, a
Yeah.
theme at conferences and stuff like that. And I don't know, maybe in the crypto world, to some extent, it exists, right? Your keys, you be your own bank and so on. Although I don't know how really efficient it is. But let's say just for the broader world, it's something that gets talked about, and yeah, I feel like we're not much closer to that kind of idea than we were 10 plus years ago. So,
Agreed.
um, are ZK proofs able to move that needle, or are we still looking at many points of inertia and just how real a conversation is this going to be?
Yeah. I think in general, uh, a single technology is not going to really move the needle, right? Like no one buys decentralization because it is decentralized. No one buys an identity solution because it is an identity solution. So it's always decentralization, self-sovereignty, identity plus something. And I think at the moment we're in a unique position where, because of the advent of stablecoin payments and like the losing importance of the US dollar in like these global stablecoin rails, plus the rise of AI agents, this solution, like the tech, becomes more important to enable, like for example, like permissionless neobanks. Pantera, there's a really really good article, blog post by Pantera from last week that actually talks about this evolution of fintech, where it used to be banking only, then it used to be fintech, and now it seems like the trend is going towards permissionless neobanks, where no matter what kind of front end you have, you'll be able to offer financial services, like access to financial services, without you yourself actually offering those services.
Right,
And in
just
order to be
coordinating.
able to do that, like decentralized identity is going to be important.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, look, last question, Alex, and thanks so much for joining me today. Um, I wanted to go back to my original thing, which you said was not a true dichotomy, which is transparency versus privacy. But let's say from a bank's point of view, or perhaps a
Yeah.
regulator's point of view, they may not see it that way. Maybe they think that, um, you know, your transparency is my privacy, or there's a clash there, in terms of how they control the data. So, in terms of being able to get large institutions, regulators, fintechs to want to move this needle forward, to embrace some of these new cryptographic methods to help enable the rise of stablecoins, the use of agentic AI. Um, who else needs to do what? Like, what are some of the moving parts that you hope to see uh, in the next year, let's say?
Yeah, it's a big question, and let me try to like I see many things currently happening, but let me maybe highlight two or three. Um, Number one opportunity that I see right now is in non-US dollar denominated FX markets. So be it like remittances, be it like B2B international payments, where at the moment the US dollar is still being used as the predominant middle currency,
Hmm.
just because liquidity pairs are bad between like the non-US dollar currencies. That's a huge area where you'll see a big rise in both stablecoins and decentralized identity and also zero knowledge proofs. Another use case is going to be in what I mentioned previously, like neo forms of like permissionless forms of current fintech solutions. So neo insurances, like pay as you go insurances that pop up, you use them for a little bit and then they expire, where it requires like much lower frictions for the verification of users. And for example, also the verification of something that is more dynamic in nature, like a hot wallet. And then the third use case that I'm really excited about is in advertisement. Like one big thing that people are currently underestimating is one of the biggest markets in the world, India, will implement their form of GDPR this November, which will completely change how advertisements are handled or just like data is handled in general in India. And you will see a lot of big players skipping like centralized data management and go directly to a decentralized data management platform. These three are the mega trends I see for the adoption of this kind of technology.
Okay, great. Well, we'll have to come back to you in a year or so and see how
Yeah,
these
please.
trends have played out. Um, Alex Scheer, thank you so much for joining me on the JDB Report. Where do people find you?
So I think the easiest is just to go to zk.me. That's our homepage. And from there you'll find all of the documents and the social media and similar things. Otherwise, follow me on LinkedIn.
Great. Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this episode of the JDB Report. I hope you found that interesting. Please leave a comment and let us know if you think this is something that you think will take off, any examples you see happening. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, like, share, subscribe. All our content is at www.jdbreport.com. Thanks for watching. I'm James DiBiasio.